So I'm in studio. Welcome to Radio Wilder. And we have in studio, usually I say, welcome to Radio Wilder, the show, but I'm not going to say the show today because we're going to talk about the show, as far as self-storage goes. And I'm going to leave that to my guest, Travis Morrow. And I invited Travis in not only because I don't know that there's anybody right now in the industry that's more interesting than you, frankly. Wow. And what you're up to and what you're doing. But unfortunately, I always have a time slot, and I figured, well, he'll talk all this about the show, but we got to know who Travis is because this lives on forever and ever. All of a sudden, Travis took me on all kinds of trails as Marlene flaked and getting the breakfast ready right on time. So I got to go through all that. So now I have to calm myself down and basically say, Travis, I'm going to leave it up to you to tell us a little bit about the Travis Morrow and some of the things you did today. And then when we get to it, you can talk about whatever you want. But we got to be talking and spend some time about the show, of course.
Absolutely. So I appreciate you having me on.
Take off however you want.
So, Travis Morrow moved to Arizona when I was 14 from Missouri. Born in Kirksville, Missouri, northeast corner of Missouri. Was there until I was 14 years old. I think it was a great place to kind of start out from. It gave me that kind of Midwest upbringing. I got, to stay out with my friends and ride bikes and come home when the street lights came on and nobody locked the doors, and we lived on this little dead-end street that had a little downhill to it that we could slide down during the winter or sled down during the winter. And then all summer, the neighbor behind us, the Baileys, I remember their name was, they had this 10-acre property that was all grass. And so we could play wiffle ball and football, and there was the section that we called the weeds, where we could go out and kind of play G.I. Joe and that sort of stuff as kids. And in the fourth quarter of my 7th grade year, my dad switched jobs, and he came out to Arizona kind of in advance of the family before the school year had ended. Mm-hmm. And so we came out for spring break just to visit him to Apache Junction, Arizona, and I stayed. Didn't go back to Missouri.
That's it.
I loved the heat. I loved the Arizona. I loved the mountains. We went hiking. I loved having swimming pools. All of the kind of standard Arizona things that were not standard in Missouri. And so...
when you say you stayed, you mean your dad came and he did his shift or whatever, he said, I'm never leaving, Dad. You didn't have a friend or a pal or an uncle to say, I don't care if Dad comes back or not right now.
No, Dad was already here.
Okay. Gotcha.
And so he was kind of setting things up with his new job.
Gotcha.
And that's just the way it timed out. And so when we came out to visit him, the original plan was my brother, my mom, and I were going to come out to visit. We were going to go back to Missouri, and then we'd all come out at the end of the school year because my mom was a school teacher. And when I got here, I just stayed. My dad already had an apartment. I'm going to stay here with Dad, and Mom and my brother, I'll see you when you get back out here. So I enrolled in school that fourth quarter of 7th grade. And
you went to 7th grade in Apache Junction?
I did, and I graduated high school in Apache Junction.
No kidding.
I did. And for those of you not familiar with Apache Junction, Arizona, or the Valley in general in Phoenix, Apache Junction is the far east edge of the valley, bordered by the Superstition Mountain. But I will say a less affluent area of the valley compared to your Scottsdales and those types of things. Mm-hmm. And that was really the reputation of Apache Junction. And I think that as I look back on it and some of the things that I'm doing now in the self-storage industry, and I think I got a little bit of a chip on my shoulder that dates all the way back to Apache Junction, Arizona. We used to, always feel like the underdog when, athletically going up against, the Scottsdale schools and the Mesa schools and the bigger programs. And we kind of had that reputation as Hicks, even in Apache Junction. And so I think that has kind of led me down a path and stuck with me throughout most of my life with what I've been doing. But so I graduated high school in AJ in '97. Went to U of A in Tucson for the first year. Once I graduated, I was on kind of community scholarship type things. My parents told me after that first year, I don't exactly know how we're going to pay for the rest of this college thing. And so had to come up with some solutions to how I was going to get through the rest of my degree. And my best friend at the time, he joined the Army right out of high school, and he had been going to basic training and AIT and those things during my first year at U of A, and he happened to be back on what the Army calls hometown recruiting. And what traditionally happens with hometown recruiting is nobody does any recruiting. They're there to be in their hometown again and spend time, quote unquote, working as a recruiter. But very little recruiting actually happens. Drank a lot of beer, hung out a lot, but not a lot of recruiting happens. Well, come the end of that time period, he's like, hey, I need you to go talk to my recruiter for me so that I can pretend like I did some work while I was back home.
Yeah.
And after having that conversation with my parents, I had no thoughts or aspirations of joining the Army necessarily at that time, especially the Army. I'd wanted to be a fighter pilot, but definitely not the Army. And when I went and talked to the recruiter, they had a great program at the Army at that time. And it was the Army College program. Sign up for 2 years of active duty and you get the full GI Bill. And that was probably the best deal that the Army's ever offered. And so I signed up, I went and took the ASVAB, scored well on the ASVAB, and they said, you can have any job in the Army you want, pretty much. And I said, well, I want to be a cavalry scout. And they said, well, we kind of save that for people that don't score as well on the ASVAB. Like, that's not a real rocket science position. And I said, well, if I'm going to join the Army, I want to shoot stuff and blow stuff up. I want the full G.I. Joe experience. And so
please, because you stumped me, and that when you said Cavalry Scout, and I immediately thought of the Civil War, or the Apaches fighting, or Custer, or any number of things. So please tell us exactly what the Cavalry Scout did, because it's fascinating.
So it actually goes back to the cavalry in the Civil War and pre-Civil War and post-Civil War, horseback troopers. So it is the cavalry that you think of from old movies. And so the cavalry scout's job was a reconnaissance job. And I like to describe it as you've got the good guys lying here and you've got the bad guys lying here, and in between you've got the scouts from both teams. And we're looking at them and they're looking at us, and we're trying to avoid each other and sneak around and be able to report back to the higher command what's going on with the bad guys. Well, fast forward to 1998, 1999, when I was a cavalry scout, the job was the same, the horses had changed. And so I was on a cavalry unit. We were heavy cav, so we were on Bradley fighting vehicles.
What's a Bradley fighting vehicle?
It is a tracked vehicle. It's got a 35 millimeter cannon on it and a tow missile.
Wow.
It's kind of paired with the A1 Abrams tank. And so each cavalry troop had companies under it, 2 companies of tanks and 2 companies of Bradleys. and we'd have our scout platoons that were associated with all of those troops. And so, if you think horseback, but in a desert environment, which desert was the big topic, post Desert Storm 1, and so when we are out and about in Bradley's, we're still out scouting, looking for the bad guys, and being able to report back to the up the chain of command what's going on with the bad guys. And so the other very cool thing that put me down the Cav Scout path was we got trained on every personal weapon system that the Army had, from a 9mm handgun all the way up to 50 cal and the tow missiles and all the various missiles and grenade launchers, and then up to the gun on the Bradley. And then when we were in Kuwait one year, I actually got to use my tax dollars and send $1,400 downrange in the form of a shell from an Abrams tank.
Wow.
And so I felt very good about myself that I actually got to fully spend my tax dollars in one pull of the trigger. And so it was a very formative time for me. I was truly out of the house at that point. When I went to U of A, I was out of Apache Junction, but I'm only an hour and a half away. Joining the Army, I did my training at Fort Knox. And then out of Fort Knox, I got stationed at Fort Stewart, Georgia, just outside of Savannah. And then when I was with my cavalry troop, then we got deployed to Kuwait over the millennium. And so back in those Y2K days, I can remember New Year's Eve, 1999, standing around in a circle with a bunch of my Army buddies smoking cigarettes, waiting for the clock to turn.
Oh, yeah.
To see if anything happened. and so we're standing in the middle of the desert in Kuwait when the millennium came.
So the reason, let me ask you this question, back to your training for every single kind of arms, from a gun all the way up to the big Bradley, was that so you could identify or find out if the enemy had that? You could say, hey, they got this and they got that, or is it just general training?
The training on the weapon system, the U.S. weapon systems, were so that we could use them.
Oh, okay.
Because Cav Scouts, in their various uses across the Army,
might use one or more of those.
Will use those weapons. A lot of the platoons are equipped with some version of all of that.
All right.
But as part of our training, we used to have these baseball cards with drawings of all of the different tanks and vehicles and things that we would see on a reconnaissance job that we would have to memorize so that we could identify a Russian BIMP, a T-72 tank, a German tank, all of these different things. We just had them in baseball cards, and we use them like flashcards to be able to remember and identify what all of these things are, because that's what Cav Scouts did. Is we would call up reports on the radio. Two scouts would get kicked out of the back of a Bradley. They'd run up the side of a hill, and we'd sit there and watch and report and get on the radio and give reports, and so you had to be able to identify what was out there so you could report on it.
So they could know what the power. So you got done smoking your cigarettes, and nothing, of course, happened in 2000.
Nothing happened, and the reason that we were there at the time was Kuwait had just purchased a bunch of Abrams tanks from the United States, and Desert Warriors, which is Britain's version of our Bradleys. And we were there to train them on a plan for what would happen, how they would use those tools if Saddam came back across the border. And we trained with the Kuwaiti Army. We got to camp and break bread with the Kuwaiti Army, and we set them up with the plan that here's how you use these new tools, and in the event this were to happen, we will pick up and move behind you in the event you screw it up. But nothing ever happened. It was a great plan. It was a super simple plan. Basically, the U.S. Abrams tanks have a max effective range of 3,000 meters. The Iraqi T-72 tanks have a max effective range of 1,500 meters. So we told the Kuwaitis, if you just park your tanks here, here, and here on this mountain range, and if Saddam's coming down with his T-72s, you've got about 1,500 meters of buffer zone before you're even in any kind of danger. But the other key secret is the T-72 tanks had to stop when they fired.
Really?
So you have kind of a shooting fish in a barrel scenario with our Abrams tanks, because the way Abrams tanks work, you could pull the trigger over here and the gunner could be turned looking at the next target while the tank is still doing its business here. And so, you know, the plan would have worked, I will say.
I think the plans would have been a win.
Pretty confident about it, but it never happened, and we ended up going back the other way on Saddam. But I was out of the Army by that time.
And then you joined all of us, somehow, or close to all of us, in the world of self-storage.
Yes, I did. Right after I graduated at U of A, came back with that Army GI Bill money and got my degree finished. And that's when I met Bob Schaaf at National Self Storage.
What a Hall of Famer in our industry, Bobby
He is a Hall of Famer.
He's a good man, a sharp guy. And
couldn't be a better guy to learn the industry from, truly.
Well, you remember him, the old guard, Joey, Mr. Nimchek, Mr. Mel Holsinger, Mr. Schaaf. They were quite a crew themselves, and I got to hang out with Hardy and those guys. They taught me a lot. They were really good guys to work with, and built a beautiful company. National Self Storage at one time was really I mean, it still has a wonderful reputation, but those guys are on the attack.
At one point, in 2005, right before we sold to what is now CubeSmart, we sold it to U-Store in the Amsdales, but it's now CubeSmart. But in 2005, when we sold that portfolio, it was the largest privately held portfolio in the country. And we sold those 70 stores back to
Well, look at how
CubeSmart
dangerous those three guys are together, and I say that in a very positive manner. They flow well. They flowed very well together. I mean, think of Mel giving you with a little of your finance stuff, Joey just being Joey, and Bob being Bob.
Yeah.
I mean, I worked with them when I was at Minico. That's how I first met them.
Yeah, I couldn't have, picked a better mentor for the self-storage industry. And, I kind of came in at the perfect age. I think that, a lot of those original crew were kind of on the backside of their careers, and they were shutting down and looking for that next generation to kind of come up and pick up the mantle. And I was just a little older than most of those guys' kids who weren't quite ready to take that mantle yet.
Plus, Oodle's more experience in the real world than they would have been. And just be fair about it.
Yeah. I learned a lot in the Army. I learned a lot in the Army, and I wouldn't trade that experience for anything, really. But so that put me at National Self Storage. I started doing feasibility consulting, which really allowed me to get in and get my hands dirty with what makes a good location for a storage facility, how do the financials tie to the location, tie to the demographics, tie to the market, and to be able to write those feasibility studies and put all of that stuff together. It's a great way to kind of start in the industry. And then in 2008, 2009, the Great Recession happened. And at that point, we'd already sold our big portfolio to CubeSmart, And so we were just kind of a little niche management company managing stuff that we owned and managing stuff for some long-term clients.
But at least maybe you had some dough in the bank if you had made the sale. Now, you mentioned Amsdale. Are those the guys from Cleveland?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know them at all.
Okay.
But I know the name. I don't know anything good, bad in between.
Yeah,
them.
no,
Didn't realize
they were great to work with, and we had some dough in the bank. You know, it was one of those first OP unit deals that are popular today.
Yeah.
From a tax treatment
Sure.
standpoint. But yeah, we were in an okay place, but Great Recession happened, and all the
But
REIT
nobody calls
stocks
it
tanked.
great because that cash in the bank is going to go like this
Yeah,
anyways,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, no, everybody, all those OP unit values took a hit, and so we had to kind of ride that out. But at the same time, National Self Storage shrunk our office staff. We actually closed down our home office and went remote in 2009.
Okay.
And so we were very small. I was doing operations, the accounting, the bank reconciliations, the end of month reports. I was doing all of that for all of the stores that we were managing, which was a great way to learn the back office side of the self-storage industry and implementing, you know, we did a software switch at that point. I think that was around the time we moved to SiteLink off from Taskmaster.
I don't even know what Taskmaster is, frankly.
So that was actually a PTI software.
Was it?
Yeah. And so I got to be involved in all aspects of running a storage facility at that point. You know, I was doing HR. We still had a HR consultant that we used, but you know, I was managing all the managers at the facilities and doing weekly staff meetings with them. And
Wow. You were getting a main line worth of all the goodies at once.
yeah, well,
was Carol there? Carol Mixon still there?
she was not there at that point.
Okay.
She was already gone, but a lot of names in the industry made their way to National Self Storage.
Damn right they did.
At some point. And so that's around the time that, you know, once we started to come out of the Great Recession, I was able to bring in my VP of Operations, Arlo Dill, who's been my right-hand man.
I know that name. I don't know him either, but he's got a good rep.
Well, I couldn't do everything else I do without him. He's got a great handle on our teams and everything on the storage operations side. I still do our end of month reports every month. I do have an accounting team that at least does the reconciliations and all of the paying the bills. But at one point I was literally doing the check runs and signing the checks and stuffing the envelopes and putting stamps on the envelopes and taking it to the post office. And I was doing that every week. And so now I just have to put together, you know, they get the reports to me, but then I go through and take the final step of reviewing all of the P&Ls for each property every month, going through and looking at what variances to budget there are, describing them to the owners, putting the reports and an email together to each one of my owners for every store every month. And I've been doing that since 2009.
Well, and when I did a little homework on you myself, other than as the human, I didn't realize you had such a good part of your degree. And you hook up finance, if you're good at finance and real estate, you got a place in self-storage.
Yeah. You know, my son is 18 now, and he's going to be a senior in high school, and we're kind of at that point where we're looking at colleges, and he is, you know, there's no reason to pick a degree now, but as we're talking about, you know, what schools and what things he may be interested in, he kind of thought maybe he might get a finance degree. And I explained to him that as far as I'm concerned, finance is the language of the world. And all of the reporting that's out there and talking about the economy and all of the messaging with how the world works comes back to speaking the language of finance. And
Which, if it's well spoken, speaks the language of that mighty cash flow.
Exactly.
Too, does it not?
Yep.
Or if I'm not getting it, I can see why I'm not getting
Yep.
it.
So I said it's a very useful area to get into because it applies across the entire world, no matter what, whether it's the entertainment business or the storage business.
Or like you've got the background, but it doesn't stop you from doing all these. It carries
No.
right along. It's a nice purse to have.
Yeah.
Yeah, let me look at this. And I can tell you the State of the Union right now. I bet you can look at a P&L, a GL, the rest of it, in
Yep.
probably 1 hour. You say, that's good, bad, or in between. You could be a deal smoker. Well,
That-
I'm sure you do when you
Yeah.
have an opportunity to look at
we when I have an opportunity,
Yeah.
I've developed a couple facilities. I'm very proud of the first facility I developed was Facility of the Year award.
Was that the one that you and me and Troy did the video at?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, that's a cool facility.
Yep. And so I got into the development game. We built that facility starting in 2017.
It's a beauty.
Yep. Super proud of that one. We built its little sister a couple of years after that. Similar look, feel, all of the technological innovations and that sort of stuff. But, when I started in 2003, the internet's only 8 years old at that point. There's still a lot
That's not what Al Gore said, but
well,
nonetheless.
yeah. But the world was just starting to modernize. And my entire career has been about looking at things that can be modernized. And just putting some pretty simple things together that can take an analog system to a digital system, or when I first, Bob used to let me tag along with him to Arizona Self-Storage Association meetings. And one of the big member benefits of AZA at the time was they handed you this huge 3-ring binder, and that was everything you needed to know about self-storage. And that binder was a pain in the ass, pardon my French, to manage. And so I made the very simple suggestion, hey, what if we put this on
I'm
CDs?
not laughing because I can see the curve. I see the fastball you're about to throw.
And so what if we put these on CDs? And it was just like light bulbs. It's like, you can do that? And it's like, sure can. File, save as, burn. And so that's how we started. AZA started distributing their book that way instead of sending these giant 3-ring binders around. But it's been that for my whole career. And how can I make the storage industry feel like other businesses that I interact with in my normal life? And so I spend a lot of time looking at the industry from that lens with the various hats that I now have. And so, to continue on with the story, 2014 was one of the National Self Storage was one of the founding companies in Store Local. This is where the chip on the should thing comes back.
Was it
into play.
2014?
2014
No
was
kidding.
was
Who'd you get together with? Must have been a pretty small little group.
It was. It was headed up by Lance Watkins.
Yeah.
The
Mr. Hummingbird.
Yep. Storage Mart. Mike and Chris were involved. Pam, Dominique.
I want to meet Storage Mart for several reasons. Here's the main reason, because when we started all this stuff, when I I don't know, 2008, Hardy and I used to go once a month down to Durant's and have lunch. Table 26, by the way, in case you're asking. And he would invite me down and we'd talk. And so one day, 2008 and 2009, we're eating there, and I said, So how's that old? Because when I first got hired by Hardy, I was the tenant insurance manager. So I tried to figure out, because he told me, this thing is at 2%, and it should be at 50. Well, I didn't know any different. So I did, in the morning I call East Coast facilities, and then I had a little cubicle. Then in the afternoon I go visit, at that time, well over 200 sites in Phoenix. So finally, after 3 months, I went to Hardy and I said, well, I really think you're a little off. I said, it's not going to be 50%. What do you mean? I said, well, because there's no incentive for the owner-operators. They don't give a shit about the product.
Yeah.
Well, they can get insurance licenses. I said, they don't give a shit.
They really don't want to do that.
Pardon my language. That's the last thing that they want to do. And so I tried every marketing. I was a pretty good marketer. We tried every trick. We came up with an idea of an oversized brochure and then a horrible burned, charred unit. Just burned.
I think I've seen those ads.
we used to get one bag of mail on Monday. Those were the mail-ins. And we had 6,000 facilities on the program with no penetration. And Deans and Homer had 6,000 facilities on their program.
Yep.
And we battled each other all the time. And we became pals with most of the guys out there, Fred, and I'm still pals with Carlos. But so we sent out the big brochure, ugly, huge, oversized and everything. And the first Monday came in, I will remember for this, as long as 5 big green bags of mail loaded with money. And I was out of my mind. I said, yes. Well, right after that, the calls started to come in. Owner-operators, who were the big dog at the companies, the P&C. Tenant insurance was little. You better take that brochure off the counter. We've never had a fire at our place. We don't want our tenants to think there's a fire. And Hardy pulled the plug on that in about 2 days. Plain and simple. And so as I learned that and got that into that, is that intimate start as far as how that went, the look and the understanding of the units and how people went and the tenant insurance versus the protection plans. So when I said, well, so how's that old tenant insurance product going? As we're digging into a club sandwich, and he said, not worth a shit. In my language, they cut me out or they don't cut me out. So nobody can fire me in this show.
That's right.
No matter what. Marlene can hassle me, but that's about it. And that's exactly what he said. I know, well, what do you mean? Well, there's these companies, and I'm not going to name them, that are illegal in some states, and they're shipping the premiums over to another state, and they're doing this, and they're doing that, and they're getting all this money. And I went, well, okay. And he said, how would you like to come back in with me, not leaving my company? You and I put together, I'll partner with you, and you come in and partner with me on my tenant insurance product. So I had a guy named Dave Rose working with me from U-Haul at the time, real sharp guy, great guy. And I said, well, hell, all right, I'll go look at it. So I went over, and Mike Schofield's a good pal of mine.
Yeah.
So we went over there and sat down, and I actually have cards. Dave is the marketing manager, me is some kind of kingpin over there. And about 3 hours into conversations with Mike, and I can't remember her, the CFO girl, nice girl, ended up helping Hardy and doing all the China stuff. And I went, I said, there's way too much crap to do with tenant insurance. I'm not having anything to do with it. The next day, I get a call from Ray McRae. And he said, hey, Bill and I are thinking about doing this tenant insurance product. We're doing, and this is relevant to Storage Mart, so I'm not going off on some crazy trail. This is your call, but it does relate. And he said, Bill and I'd like to pick your brain. We know you handled it at Minico. He said, we want to take you out for a buffet. And I said, God, you and Bill are cheap. You're going to take me out to a Chinese buffet. Ray's a very good pal. Mine and Bill's a pretty good pal, but Ray and I are real close. And I said, okay. So then we decided to go in the SAC together. So the whole point of it, so we did tenant insurance, I told you all that. Finally, we ran into somebody and turned us on to protection plans. And this guy is one of the finest lawyers in the United States, cost $800 an hour if you want to engage him to create. And then the guys I told you in Atlanta, they knew him. He has a big office in Atlanta too, and DC he has a big office. Created this big old back office thing that we got that's fabulous and wonderful. Bottom line is, you don't need a license, you don't need all this crap. Hell, you can give it away for free if you please. You better not try to give tenant insurance over $10 away for free. Now, nobody's going to hold you accountable anymore, but why be in business and cheat? What's the purpose of it? You don't need to do it. Meanwhile, about 5 years ago, I found out that 1 year after we came up, and we're ahead of them by 1 year, Storage Mart already had one. All the sales I would have lost, that I would have gained if I didn't know those big commanders, burn them, because what was happening in California was Deans and Homer was fighting the protection plan hassle.
Yep.
And so every time I talked to somebody, well, let's see what happens in California. Let's see what I just wish, and I got to meet those guys sometime. I just wish I would have known. Damn it, guys! If I could have said, well, it's good enough for the Burnham brothers. It's good enough for me. So let's go back to you, number 2. I'm sorry to steal the thunder, but I have a lot of respect for those guys.
Absolutely, they're speaking of Hall of Famers, integral to the growth of the industry, and they've turned a few portfolios in their time, and done very well from Columbia, Missouri. So more Missouri guys.
Show me state.
State. That's right. So 2014 store local. We realized.
How did you come up with the idea? Don't just say store local. What made you? Who had the idea? Did you have it? You and the gang? I know you wanted to compete against the REITs. That's part of it.
That was part of it, and so it was. Lance was the kind of original founder. Bob and I had created a similar kind of cooperative model in 2010 that we called the National Self-Storage Alliance. It was something that we kind of did internally, but Lance knew that co-op existed, so he and I got together pretty early on, talking about a cooperative in the self-storage industry. And the fear was that really kicked it off was that Sparefoot was going to do to the self-storage industry what Expedia did to the hotel industry. And that was take a 30% bite out of our revenue with their reservation system. And so
that's a big bite too.
It's a real big bite.
Yeah.
And the nice thing about self-storage kind of living 15 years behind the hotels is we get a little bit of a glimpse into the future of what could happen and what options would we have if we chose a different route. And so we thought that one of those options would be, well, what if instead of paying an Expedia, what if we owned our version of Expedia?
Yeah.
Because at one point, Expedia went to the hotels, the big 5, and offered to sell.
Really?
And they said, I don't need anything to do with this internet crap. and oops.
Yeah.
And so they, spent 30 years fighting back against that. And so that was really the thing that kicked it off was we thought Sparefoot could be the Expedia to the storage industry. We thought we would be better off as an industry if the owner-operators could own that Expedia. And so that week, it was called Storagefront. We bought it from Red Nova Labs.
I remember Red Nova Labs.
Yeah.
Not much about them, but I do remember.
Yeah, out of Kansas City. More Missouri guys.
Yeah.
And so that acquisition and running Storagefront led Store Local into developing white label websites.
It's a good name, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah. URL's a good one.
It's like it a lot, and it's continuing to grow.
Yeah.
But we started white labeling websites for operators, and then all of a sudden the property management softwares didn't want to integrate anymore. And
what a cluster that is.
And telling an entrepreneur no is not
doesn't work.
The best thing.
Because they're going to find the yes.
We went and found a yes, and ultimately it was, we're going to have to go build our own property management software. Weren't real excited about it. We knew
there's nothing exciting about it.
We knew what the undertaking was going to be, and it's been more expensive and taken longer than we even thought it was going to be. But in 2019, we spun off Tenant Inc. To develop that software platform. Lance became the CEO of Tenant Inc.
Does Lance own sites?
Yes, Lance,
Oh, okay.
Lance has 20, 25.
So when he came in, he didn't just come into he said, I got some skin in the game. I got sites myself. So
absolutely.
That's why you really flowed together.
He's not just some tech guy making software for an industry. He's building stuff for his stores too.
Good. Okay, good.
And so I then became CEO of Store Local. We at the time I took over, we had 112 member companies in Store Local. Today we've got over 500.
Wonderful.
And we've built out our platform and continued building our platform, and we've got 1,500 facilities on Hummingbird, and so in that period, you know, we spun off Tenant and from Store Local, and then in 2023, Tenant and Store Local remerged, and with Tenant being the parent company and Store Local being a sub-brand. Also in 2023 is when we bought MSM underneath Store Local. And so MSM falls underneath me as CEO of Store Local.
And you were driven to buy Messenger because you said, now to start to flesh this thing out, we're going to need something like this. We might as well take the commander of the industry or something like I'm making all that. There had to be a driven thing because you could create your own magazine from scratch.
There's the good reasons and the bad reasons.
Okay.
And they're both, to me, good reasons. The first one was, with my history in the industry at that point to 2023, I knew Bob's history with Hardy. I knew Bob's history with Minico. I knew Hardy very well. I knew Poppy very well. I knew the history of the institution that was Mini Storage Messenger in the self-storage industry. I had seen that over the years, as Minico continued to get acquired by larger and larger insurance companies, that Mini Storage Messenger continued to exist, but it never got any attention from these larger and larger insurance companies.
Sure.
And so, speaking of Mike Schofield, he and I started having conversations about,
good guy,
would there be a scenario that, you know, your new owner would entertain the idea of parting with the assets that are Mini Storage Messenger and selling them to Store Local. And it took us 18 months of conversation, but that finally happened. And so the first reason that I say it's the bad idea, because there's no financial incentive to it, but I just didn't want to see that piece of the history of the industry just go out of business and go away, because it was the only of the three publications in our industry, it was the only one that had the lens of the independent owner-operator.
That's correct.
And as Store Local, a company made up solely of independent owner-operators, there was a natural match there. And I also knew that, you know, I jokingly say this, but there's some truth to it, that, you know, based on the 2020 election that had just happened and evidence from Bezos and Musk, if you have an opportunity to own a media company, it's probably not a bad piece to own, and to be able to control the voice of the independent owner operator and the messaging that's getting out there for the independent owner operator. So then, you know, there's also additional marketing benefits and different things that are financial good reasons to buy MSM, but it just seemed like such a natural fit for Store Local to have. And so we closed that in 2023. We rebranded it in September of 23 to, we wanted to keep the MSM, but we were no longer mini storage as an industry, so we needed to update that. So we've been running that now going on 3 years. And after we bought that magazine and announced that we bought it, the question that I got asked the most was, when are you guys going to do a show? Which kind of surprised me. But I got asked that question a lot. And I said, for the first couple of years, you know, give me a moment to get my arms around the publishing business first. I've never owned a magazine before. Let me figure out, you know, how this works. And then it came to be last summer, we were talking about just the landscape of the national conferences and the self-storage industry, and how, you know, it's kind of divided up between spring and fall and east and west. And when you look at that, there is, in the fall on the East Coast, a vacancy. And if MSM were going to do an event, that would be the vacancy to fill. And so the more we talked about it, going back to what we were talking about earlier with just taking existing things and looking to modernize the way that they're done, I said, yeah, we can do that with a national conference in our industry. And we started down the path of the show.
And in my in my opinion, from doing lots of them, you mentioned something about 30 minutes ago. We talked about one of the groups that could have and should have done something. The hotel industry buying XP. They didn't do it. Well, I have the similar story about the Yellow Pages. It's not a story. The Yellow Pages could have been Google.
Yeah.
But information, everything in the book, but the guys just wanted the money in their pocket. There was no foresight, no nothing. You wanted information, you call information.
Yeah.
The white pages out, all the goodies were there.
Right.
If you wanted to have taken it that forward, I'm not saying there wouldn't have been a Google or an Amazon or anything, but you'd have been a stout player. You'd had 100 years worth of information all over the country. I mean, at one time when you were barely born, there used to be a thing called business-to-business directories.
Yeah.
New York, NYNEX had a business-to-business. Chicago had a business. I got a lot of business out of the LA business-to-business, cold calling, getting business. Well, people look at all that, so I think of what you guys did, and you really brought it actually to, I think there's been some funky things the last couple of years in the trade shows, but regardless, I've been to all of them and around all of them, and whether it's SSA or ISS or whatever. But what I had, when you started to point out some of these things, and of course, one of the biggest to a vendor is, give us even if it's 3 hours instead of 6 with intermittent traffic, let us have a shot. That's what we're there for.
Right.
And then if you want to have a session after, okay, the trade show is closed at 3:30 or 4. Now Travis is speaking at 4:30. Or so-and-so has the early breakfast, or great keynotes. Get them in there and do it right. But that little window, it's just kind of gone away.
Yeah, no, it's, I refer to it as competing content.
Yeah.
And the trade show floor should be sacred.
And if you're on the trade show floor and you don't have anything good, new, or anything else to bring to somebody, they're just going to blow by your booth anyways and not go. But don't take that customer away from at least making that decision that,
Correct.
Hey, Travis has got nothing new this year. I've been there. I've been to 4 of the shows this year. It's the same guy.
So in building the show, that was one of the areas. So I kind of break the show down. We've got our attendee experience,
Yep.
which is everybody's familiar with, but that's the piece that we want to elevate to another level, right? That to make it bigger, to make it a true experience, and we'll talk more about that. But from the exhibitor standpoint, it's gotten to the point where our exhibitors don't totally get treated like customers. They don't get treated like they deserve an experience, or it feels like, and because store local and tenant,
Sure.
I've been a vendor to I've been on that side of the fence as well. It's like, give us your money, here's your booth space, now it costs $500 for Wi-Fi and $2,000 for a badge scanner and plus, and hope you have a great time. Here's a couple drink tickets. Maybe you get some leads. That's not what the exhibitors are there for. And so we are trying to create an experience for the exhibitors as well that is focused on increasing the opportunities for them to generate leads, which is what they're there for.
Yeah.
And the biggest way that you can do that is to not give people an excuse to go anywhere else during the trade show floor hours with The excuse being, I have to go to an LOC meeting, or I have to go to a manager's council, or an economic summit, or any of these other things that at other events overlap with the trade show floor hours. That's not the experience that our exhibitors are after. And so we just tried to, look at, and talking to our other exhibitor friends, find those pain points that we all experience at other shows and address them early on so that they won't pop up at the show. One of the first decrees I kind of made when we started planning this was, we aren't going to use Freeman as our general contractor for this event.
Yay.
And
look at Terry over there. Yay.
Those that have exhibited and used Freeman, because both the SSA and ISS use Freeman,
Terrible.
know that Freeman's not super focused on the experience of the exhibitor either. And so we went with a company called Shepherd, still a big national general contractor, but $150 million a year in revenue company. But they're headquartered in Atlanta.
Nice.
Their warehouse is in Atlanta. And I believe they do have a little more focus on customer service, and they're familiar with the GWCC and how all of the pieces work there. And so it's just those things, and like I mentioned before, the Wi-Fi and the badge scanning and lead capture stuff. We're just trying to address those things and remove the friction wherever we can from everybody's experience at attending a national show.
Because when you get done, because you've done it a million times, all you care about is what's the quality of the lead, what kind of traffic, and when we ask our people, okay, how was the show?
Yep.
Well, yeah, the traffic was okay, but we just had a guy come back from Arkansas. I guess it was in early May. Well, it was a little down, the traffic was, and I thought, wow, there's a lot of trade shows in the last 60 days going around.
Yep.
Good, better in between, because
Sure.
You're right, it's the spring and the fall. And he said, yeah, but I got a couple of leads, or you want to have an overflow if you can get it. You want to have yourself a lot of leads to work.
Absolutely.
Because by the time you get down, because storage, it's not a fast gestation period.
No.
Making decisions and making deals, unless you got the only game in town. And so it doesn't, you'd have to go turbocharged, but you're right, you kind of feel like anymore that, and then we've run into a situation the last 2 or 3 years that all of a sudden we're too late for shows, or we didn't even know we got the information. And
Yeah.
this is like, we used to have 3 weeks to make a decision. It's like, sorry, now you can have a tabletop.
Yeah.
And you're out. Well, as far as Christina and I went, we passed on the SSA because I don't want a tabletop. We can do some other damage without even doing that. We're all in for your show, for
Yep.
the show, and we're happy to go all in. I don't want a tabletop. I don't even want to be off in a side room and be any of that stuff. And I'm thinking, I've been a loyal customer for 30, how old my company is, 37 years old, 36 years old, whatever. I've been to most of them, and
Right.
I don't deserve any. If I don't come through in my time limits, well, too bad on me. But we battled with SSA and said, dude, we didn't have any time. We're inventing, and we had a real battle 2 years ago with Texas. Hell, I was at the very first Texas show, and I was there for Hardy, but we were shut out, and I went, I've been with Hardy in my show, I've been to every single Texas source. Well, sorry, you didn't get this done again. So can you move something around for me? Can I pay a little extra? Can I get a reward for coming to your stupid show for 30 years? Nope, too bad.
Yeah. And so those are the types of frustrations that many vendors and exhibitors in the industry feel. And so we're trying to be upfront and transparent, and this is what our process is going to be, and this is how the booth selection draft order goes, and all of these things.
Hey, you want it, you pay.
Right. And sponsors pick first, and then it goes by the order that you signed up. So thank you for, to those that signed up early, your thank you is you get to pick your booth sooner than the next guy. And I'm not playing politics.
You can't.
And it's just sign up quick and you get to pick sooner. And
Well, you called us.
Yeah.
How long did it take us to
it
commit?
took no time, and I appreciate that very much.
Well, but I mean, the point is, we said we're all
Yeah.
we believe in you and believe in what's going on, And I didn't really think at the time, and I don't think Terry did when he talked about it, about all the defeats of what was going on at the trade show. It's just thought, Travis is going to bring something, they're going to bring something new to the table. And when you talked to us about it, it was like, okay, let's go in.
Yeah.
I think we were at another trade show when we said, yeah, okay, he called me and I said, yeah, we're in.
It's, again, I just see these things, having done them for 20 years, and that's the way we've always done it. That doesn't have to be the answer. And
your deal rooms, tell us about some of that. Give us some of those other little extra things you have that I think are super cool, where you're hey, if you want to go make, I don't know, I didn't study all of it, but there's a deal room and there's this, and they're real cool.
I'll give you kind of the big overview.
Okay, good.
And so we have packed over 60 hours of self-storage content across MSM's 4 pillars of content: operations, data, investment, and development.
Okay.
There'll be 4 separate rooms, and everything in that room is going to be about one of those pillars. Then what we have is what I'm calling the sub-pillars, but we have a manager's office, which is manager-specific content related to improving your manager's performance. So that's telephone technique, that's sales skills, that's facility maintenance, that's some technology presentations, all content dedicated to making your manager a better manager when they get back to the office on Monday. And then you mentioned the deal room. So we have the deal room powered by Tract IQ. That is, when you go to a normal show, you see all these little side meetings happening with the brokers and people and secretly showing stacks of paper and
I've been in those and I've done that.
Yeah,
actually, yes.
And so you see that all the time. Well, we really thought that is a great opportunity for education. So there are a lot of people still very interested in getting in the self-storage industry. And we thought, what if we did kind of like a Shark Tank for self-storage, where if you're an owner-operator or you're a broker and you have a deal that you're out selling, we'll give you 5 or 10 minutes on stage to present your deal to a room full of people who like to buy deals.
Yeah.
And they're going to ask you questions about the deal. You can answer those questions. We'll throw a QR code up that pair the people up.
Great idea.
And that was our original idea, and we've partnered with Tract IQ, who is now sponsoring the deal room, and they're taking it even a step further. And so we're still fleshing out all of the fine details, but they're actually going to bring an actual deal. Broker's going to present it, and then they're going to bring in the lender who's going to underwrite it live. Then they're going to bring in the insurance broker who's going to underwrite it live. They're going to bring in all of the pieces that
deal makers,
all the people that are required to make a deal happen. They're going to do it to live deals.
That's awesome.
To the point where if someone were so inclined sitting in that room, they will have all of the information that they need to submit a deal in that room, to submit an offer on that deal in that room.
Wow.
And so the goal one day is that, and I don't know if it'll happen year one, but one of my goals is that we make somebody a millionaire because they're able to sell their storage facility in the deal room.
Well, they can't do it in any other shows.
Nope.
Right now, that's not
like that. And so that's all of our pillar content. Then we've got 6 keynote speakers.
Great ones.
And I'm very excited about the keynote space. It's a great room. The show itself takes place the day after midterm elections. And so the first morning, we're very fortunate to get 2 U.S. congressmen who are also self-storage guys. Mm-hmm. There are self-storage congressmen is what I call them. And we've got them both joining us the first thing Wednesday morning they're both first-term congressmen, and they're going to tell us about what the results of the midterms means for them, what their outlook of the next couple of years is, what their first couple of years in Congress were, how that fits to their lens of self-storage. I think it's going to be very interesting first morning. Then Wednesday afternoon, just to mix it up a little bit, but especially for the people in the Southeast, we're bringing Chipper Jones in.
The Chipper.
And Chipper, he's a personality, and he's got a lot to say. It hasn't been announced yet, so I can't announce it now. But one of the sharpest minds in our industry happens to be a Chipper Jones fan, and is going to be performing the interview with Chipper in that session. And so we're excited to announce that as we get closer to the event. Then the next day, again, coming off midterm elections, Thursday morning, Scott Jennings from CNN. Controversial figure with plenty to say, but again, it's all about the interesting content that I'm after. So we're excited by that. Then Thursday afternoon, we'll have the CEO of the Atlanta Mission, who is our charity partner for the event, one of our charity partners for the event. And then,
what is the mission?
So the Atlanta Mission is homelessness and job placement in the Atlanta area.
Okay.
We see a natural fit between the self-storage industry and homelessness, and what we can do as an industry.
There could be.
We as operators deal with it frequently across the country.
Whether you like it or not.
Whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
And so we certainly wanted to benefit a local charity.
Good for
the
you.
Atlanta Mission has been around for a long time in Atlanta, does a lot of good work. I went down there to one of their facilities a couple months ago and got to kind of live the day in the life at the job placement side of things that they do, which was very interesting. Just a ton of energy and excitement, and people trying to get back on their feet and trying to find jobs. And they're teaching them how to get jobs and become productive members of the workforce. Really impressive organization. And so we're excited to have them on Thursday. And then Friday, we got a couple dominoes or puzzle pieces that we've got to fit in for the Friday morning session. But one of the speakers we're excited about that could fill that Friday morning session, he's committed, he's speaking at some point during the show. I'm still playing with the where. But we've got Joe Schoen from U-Haul. And
nice.
Joe's got plenty to say.
I'm sure he does. Plus, I heard on Friday, late breaking news that I heard this morning, there could be a former Calvary Scout talking on Friday. I heard that. I can't confirm it.
That is absolutely true. I reserved the worst time slot.
I love that when you
for
said
myself.
Excellent.
None of our other speakers can complain about their slot because I have the worst slot. So I get that out of the way early. And but I'm going to be talking about the reputation of our industry, things that we can't control, things that we can control, and then I'm going to be talking about some reasons why, regardless of that, the future of our industry is very bright.
You know, you say something, and I told Christina, we'll be staying there on Friday morning. Normally, I'm gone Thursday night.
Yeah.
But I'm going to see the Calvary Scout, and we're going to show our support, and I hope everybody else does because of what you've done. I hope, because you know how it is Friday morning.
Oh, no, absolutely.
It could be.
And so I will tell the listeners that I am intentionally loading Friday with good content
Uh,
because I don't want people to bail.
no, and that's the normal.
right.
You've done it yourself, I'm sure.
Right, absolutely. But there's going to be amazing content the entire event. And, you know, I got some feedback last week. Someone had, you know, we announced our speakers, or at least kind of the first phase of our speakers. And the feedback we got was, well, these are a lot of the same people I've seen speak before. And that's a fair, you know, point to make. I think the key is that we, what I challenge all of our speakers to do, though, is to bring us something new.
Yeah.
Like, we need to push beyond what we've been doing over the last 5 years and get people to think. Give me the new stuff. Give me
And
what
give me a
you're
reason to
doing now.
think when this thing is successful, I'm either going to be asked back or I'm not.
Right.
Next year, if I score, you're asking me back to speak, and
Absolutely.
that's the way it should be.
And so, yes, a lot of the same people. We've got some new faces, but a lot of the same people. But they're the experts in the industry. I mean, we can't change the industry. We have our experts.
But when you throw everything else, like the deal room and the rest of that stuff, it changes the whole dynamics of the thing.
100%.
So
And
you're not going, oh, there.
because to me, what I am trying to create for owner-operators and exhibitors is a new experience. So it's not just speakers, it's not just trade show floor, it's not just evening events. It is the whole experience. And so, speaking of evening events, you know, the first night we're doing our opening party at the Georgia Aquarium. And we've got on one side of the room, they have this 1,200 person ballroom. That one side of the ballroom looks into, it's this huge glass wall that looks into the main aquarium tank at the Georgia Aquarium. And then on the other side, it looks into the beluga whale habitat. Wow. And the whole place is going to be done up. It's going to be a party. You know, I know our industry. We like to party.
Yes.
That it's been that way since I first got in.
Used to be some really great parties, by the way.
I like to throw a good party.
I'm sure.
And
I'd love to go to your good party. Yes.
And so, you know, the aquarium the first night, back to the hotel. I went, you know, again, knowing our industry like I do, when we were looking at the hotel space, one of the first things I went to look for is where's the circle bar? Every storage event has the circle bar.
And they
now
work.
It could be in a different space and the bar might not actually be circle, but in the industry, having gone to the circle bar at Caesars for so many years, for example, that became the ubiquitous name for every hotel bar that an event was at. And so the Signia Hotel actually has 2 circle bars. It'll be interesting to see which one gets the most
I got my
traffic.
reservations right behind me.
That's right.
I got that lined up very nicely.
But then the last thing from an experience standpoint, and this is going to be a unique one, and I openly admit that I stole this from Fidessa. MSM for 20 plus years has done our Facility of the Year awards and our Manager of the Year awards. And how they've been announced historically was when the issue came out. And you see who won the overall Facility of the Year on the cover of Messenger, and you see who won Manager of the Year on the cover of Messenger. Well, now that we have the show, we get to do a full-blown red carpet, black tie optional, Oscar-style dinner awards gala party at the end of the year, kind of celebrating the entire year of self-storage. That is hugely popular in Europe at Fidessa. I've gone to it a few years. And it was just such a good idea that I couldn't believe it hadn't been brought to the US yet. And so it's a natural fit for MSM to do our awards live at this gala, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
Sometimes I sit in this rocking chair and I'm thinking of something because I do want to ask you something, and all of a sudden you just gave me like a perfect segue. So one of my, it's not even a pet peeve. There's other languages I would use, but I won't do it. And it started at Minico. You know, my very first visit to a self-storage site, I was greeted by a guy in a wife-beater T-shirt out in Glendale, PA, and I said, "What kind of shithole is this?" It had chain link fence. I said, "I would store anything in this place." And of course, then through the years, I met great operators and supreme husband, wife, or manager apartments that were, you know, I saw it go all the way the other way and in between. I've always thought, and it's my opinion, I've never run any self-storage site ever. But I've always thought that the managers didn't get their fair share in this industry. And I'm talking about dough. And nowadays, when you go out and get a job at Whataburger and challenging a good assistant manager, and here's my point. Otherwise, you just say, "Oh, you sound like a whiner." Here's my point in your finance world. It's one thing to have a $1.3 million facility. It's another to have a $12 million facility.
Yeah.
And I don't want somebody at 35, 38K out running my $12 million, $11 or $10 million facility. That's just me. And I've always thought that's one of the reasons we're a small owner, but we are an owner of HUG with our guys that do all the big stuff with American Airlines and all the rest of it. And I just said to Christina, we're going to make sure them, and we're going to be in other industries. We're going to talk to truckers. We're going to talk to everything. But I want to make sure those managers get a very inexpensive, something that they can afford, and hopefully an owner will, like you did, will take care of them. If they're not, let me reach out to and make an offer, put 5 of your friggin' family members on. And I can tell you when, years ago, I ran several programs with some of my companies that rewarded managers for basically selling my product. Because of protection plan, you could do that. Again, I don't think anybody's challenging tenant insurance, but you really can't do that unless you have a license.
Right.
I'm not calling anybody else. This is the way it goes. And I had one time for an AAA key site on Hayden, right next to the salt cellar. I took a manager $100. She squeezed the crap out of me. I thought the air was going out of me for a $100 bill. So I've always thought, and Carol and I had a good conversation at Arizona about her helping me. We're building this Blink Swag site that we got the help from, I think, Storage Defender, one of Christina's pals, showed you how they're using it. We're going to have a full-fledged managers program. It's either going to be points or it's going to be dollars. I want to give them stuff. Yes, I want them to buy our product, but yes, the more their managers and stuff they come into. So when you told me about your gala, I'm a manager backer. It's just the way it is. And managers don't buy my product. I can't make a sale to a manager and say, "Hey, can I sell you my product?" No. So it's not some fake thing that I've always kind of felt that. And I've got a lot of manager pals and some of my owner friends that I don't treat them great. You guys do a good job. The ones that provide medical insurance, give them a break, give them a little something. And in the old days, when the old days, if you gave them $32,500, but you also gave them a handsome apartment, that's a different dynamic.
It is, absolutely. I mean, that apartment had value in the calculation of what.
So I love the fact you're doing that. Give them a reward. We had a couple years where we had managers win our product. We flew them to Vegas to the ISS show. And had them 3 days there. They thought, I've just got a $150,000 win. It probably cost me $5K, $6K.
Yeah, we're on the NSS side, for the show. Of course, all my DMs are going. I've got Arlo +2. But
I'd like to meet him someday.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you'll meet him at the show.
Okay, good.
But we're also bringing our managers. Not all of them. I got to keep the stores open.
Sure.
But we are bringing.
Good for you, man. I'm proud of you.
We are absolutely bringing our managers because I want them to have the experience of what it's like to be in the self-storage industry from that standpoint.
And you want them fired up. You don't want them
absolutely.
I put together a site, and I might have told you this, but I put a little site to go give it to the manager.com. Boy, I was booed off. The manager said, "I'm paying them, I'm treating them right, I'm doing this." I'm like, "Okay, whatever." So that didn't go over. I said, if you give them $1 out of the protection plan product, your rates, you'll go from 6%, this is before opt-in and opt-out, all the software, and they'll shoot you up to 30% because every time a customer comes in, they're going to be engaged. They got a chance to get $1 a month out of that product. No. So it went down. So I'm really happy to see that you're doing that. And I feel real good going out to know that I'm going to help, in my opinion, underserved maybe management. When you're talking 50, 55, and you're talking about the salary level, and you're talking about the insurance coverage, the great players in store take care of it, and they know better. The other ones, it's cheaper. Great's against me. I got to tell you, it's just my own personal 8 cents worth. But I've been around there 40 years, and so I'm not some Johnny-come-lately on the deal. But I honestly have to tell any of the fans, I've never run a site.
Yeah. But if we find a great manager, we want to keep that person for as long as they want to be with us. And so we want to incentivize them through
no doubt you do
bonuses and performance bonuses and base pay and health insurance and all of the things that we can do to keep them happy, that allow them to do the great job that they do for us.
And you're not one of the people that I'm speaking of specifically. You, and I know other ones too. They love and cherish a good manager. Why wouldn't you?
Well, I learned that from Bob.
Yeah.
I mean, we had managers at National be with us for 25 years. Like their entire adult career was a manager at storage facilities. Some, went up to district manager and that sort of thing, but they were with us their whole career.
Well, that speaks volumes, because they're not going to be with you your whole career if that's just how it goes.
Right.
Not
if we're not treating them well.
Well, and while I never ran a self-storage facility, in introducing, and Marlene used to train some of our original, go out to the managers, and when we first started doing it, tell them what it was and buy them a sandwich and whatever, and you could certainly tell the good ones from the off, like anything else in any other kind of wear. But the difference of value of self-storage facilities to what it is now, you got some beasts out there.
Oh, absolutely.
And the other thing is, and this has nothing, look at my handsome German Shepherd. I'm looking out there and looking at him right now. And the other thing,
he's a good boy,
which nothing to do with you whatsoever, because you're a top player, and I have plenty of my pals that are top players, is when you just look at them and you see them there at the site, and I mean, they're the face of what you got, and I know it in my own company. I mean, I learned a lot just seeing it, but the way you're going to treat these people and how it's going to go, I'm very excited about the whole thing. I really am excited about it, and I think it's going to be, the bottom line is going to be how well are we all do in our business.
Yeah.
The vendors 100%. Come out, but I can tell you right now, their experience is already guaranteed to be better.
Well, and
they're going to give it another shot.
Right.
Is what I'm saying. Regardless if we're all going to try to help and pack the attendees in as best we can.
Yeah, because it's kind of it's partially the baseball theme of the show, but it's just kind of also just how I speak. But putting together a national conference can absolutely be a team sport. There's no reason that the exhibitors that are on the floor and the event producer that MSM is, we all share the same goal, and that is having an event that is stocked with thousands of actual self-storage operators.
Yeah.
And I feel like one of the things that over time has started to dwindle is there hasn't been enough focus or drive towards getting the owner-operator to show up and motivating the owner-operator to show up. And it takes ourselves at MSM and the marketing that we're doing to those people,
sure.
in addition to all of our exhibitors helping motivate their customers. I mean, the math itself is actually very simple for having an excellent show. If we've got 126 exhibitors on the floor and everybody brings 10 customers, we've got 1,260 owner-operators on the floor for 3 hours, for 2 days. Everyone is happy with the show.
Well, and how about just the general excitement
when
you go into a show and you feel that energy? And let's not forget one thing: whether it's a male or it's a female in the industry, whether it's Lori or whether it's Alana Ross or whatever, telling her hubby, hey, I'm going to this industry, look what's there. We're going to get a little something from Wolfgang. We're going to have this. They're going to be partners that are owner-operator partners, whether it's the hubby or wife. I've already been to that show. Oh, wait a minute
Haven't been
now.
to this one.
I haven't been to this one. That's going to have a little extra.
Yep.
That
And you know, as a first-year show, of all of the years to bring it, the first year is the year to bring it. And
that's correct.
you know, we've got to put on the best event possible, the highest experience possible that people have ever attended in this industry. And so I think we've done a great job so far. We've got a lot of lift to go between now and November. But
you started at a good time. You have engaged all of us like a team. You have done that, and it does work. Well, if it's good for me, it's good for you. If it's good for you, it's good for me. That's just, we're very excited to go. And as I thought about the other night, I thought, hell, my baby, she likes to go to the show with me and not, but sometimes leave her. Sometimes Mikey needs a pal here.
Yeah.
She doesn't get to go over to San Antonio, but on this show, she's going.
Awesome.
Honey, I'll be going. I'll be going to this show no matter what. You get a chance to put on something nice, something to do.
That's
Hell,
right.
we're all humans. And some
yeah,
people,
I jokingly, our awards gala, I look at it and I call it to my team self-storage prom.
yeah, I love that.
You know, as an industry, let's get dressed up and celebrate the fact that we are in one of the greatest industries in all of business and commercial real
Spend
estate.
my whole life.
Yeah.
Spend mostly your whole life.
Correct. And we're lucky to be here.
Absolutely.
I say all the time, people don't graduate business college and say, I can't wait to get into self-storage. Never been said once in the history of man. But the people that make their way to self-storage very rarely leave.
And you know, we're going to get a point, and I want to make sure you're getting any last minute things, and we'll take a 5 or 10 minute break. Then bring your tunes up.
Yep.
You talk about your tunes. We all know all the Hall of Famers and Hardys and the guys that have gone before us, like Harold Leslie's and all these kinds of people. I can see some of those Buzz Victors and people. You're way too young to know Buzz.
I know
but,
Buzz.
But Bob knows him.
Yep.
And what they'd see with this show would shock the you-know-what out of them, the crap. And I remember the ISS. I mean, Mike and I, we didn't have any money, but we're going to support Bob, Tish.
Yep.
And since we wrote the plan and we're going to put the money in, it was fabulous for us. You know, for years, Yellow Page was the only game in town. Mike and I once spoke to 1,000 people at ISS, 1,000.
Yeah.
And at the end, I walked in one day to do, and there were 6. They were basically saying, the Yellow Pages are gone, Harry.
Yes.
Better find something else to do. But the excitement of a new show coming on for profit, the ISS versus the old guard, the SSA, that carried for years.
Yeah.
That spun out for hey, it's the ISS show and it's in
Absolutely.
Vegas, and they did there was some extra
And
credit stuff going on.
You know, one of the things with the two show, or the kind of two entity setup, if you will, with SSA and ISS, is ISS has the reputation of being kind of the newbie show.
Yeah.
And they get a lot more of the newbies, not a lot of the old guard,
Correct.
so to speak. And then you've got the SSA, who's got a lot of your top 100s and the REITs, and everybody likes to go from that group to the SSA show. Well, for our show, the show, I want everybody.
Yeah.
And so we are working with the podcasters and influencers that influence that new generation of storage owner operators. And I'm also going after all the top 100, to the extent that I sent every top 100 operator 2 free tickets.
Mm-hmm.
This is the first year of the event. I want you here. Here's 2 free tickets. Please send someone from your company to check this out if you don't come yourself, because if your company's not here, you're missing it.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we can have an event that is a blend of those two audiences, plus the experience and the overall attendee experience that we are after, if we can execute on that, we're gonna have something special on our hands.
Well, I'm thrilled with the effort, and again, thrilled is one thing, but we bought in immediately, and
Yep,
that's
I appreciate it.
not for any reason to say appreciate, because we're not going to buy into anything that we think, hey, I want to be a part of this.
Yeah.
And a lot of the other original people coming in, and your track ones, and some of your hotter players, there's nothing old, been there, done that, 6 Mile in the Snow stuff about this. So we're going to root you on. I told you, as far as Radio Wilder, we have a lot of storage fans that listen to us. You can put on any message you want at any time. We'll be putting it on and we'll be supporting it, because what's good for me and good for you is good for our industry. And same with those 100 operators.
Yep.
You could carry it all you want. You send them 2 tickets. Well, my competition's there, this and that. Well, someday you may want to sell your book of business.
Right.
In some ways, you better get your butt out there and increase it, and meet 9 bankers and hang out with Live Oak or whatever the hell was on there.
Absolutely.
And that's that.
I will say that's one of the things that I learned from Bob Schaaf early on, to kind of take our conversation full circle. He was never just interested in the performance of our portfolio. He was very much interested in the industry as a whole, what is good for the industry as a whole, whether it be the state association or the national association. What's good for the industry? And that's something that I learned very early on, and have continued to kind of drive that forward. And I think a modern national conference and trade show with an upgraded experience for all of the attendees, whether they be operators or exhibitors, is really what's next for this industry and what it deserves.
I don't doubt it. And let's remember one other thing. Whatever problems there are with storage shows or whatever complaints there are, it's still one of the weird industries where trade shows work.
Yes.
To a certain extent. Now, is it time to do exactly what you're talking about? Yeah, but you don't have a say, I've never done a trade show. I wonder how that'll be. No, you got 40 years of seeing them and associations and how that's going to be. So I'm excited that you're in here. And it's really nice to learn all the stuff. We can't talk about your gliders, and we can't talk about this. And
we could do this all day here.
Yeah, the Bradley tanks and the rest. But I really love to learn from other storage people myself. I've learned a lot from. I've wonderful. You're right. I didn't plan to be in the industry. My background is I'm liberal arts. My dad owned radio stations. My grandfather owned radio stations. And my dad ran television stations. I was all sexed up to be in. I'll be doing TV and doing that, and I ended up in the Yellow Pages. And then that got me into storage.
Yeah.
Somebody said, "You're in the Yellow Pages. What the hell what work can you do?" And how that, and got me into storage, and some of my very best pals and people I could count on. And I love having a relationship with Hardy. We're very close, and people like that. And here's another thing I throw, and it's not anything new. I'm a big backer of girl power, women power. They're stout and they're all over the place now, and I love seeing it. I got you got some good pals you hang out with in the industry, and there's nobody better from the old school messengers than Poppy.
That's right.
I've been very pleased to meet Poppy and start spending some time with Poppy. She's a real cool lady. I like Brad. I like Lori. I like you're putting together a good crew. And let's not forget this. The final thing I'll say is, you pick up that MSM magazine. Not only do I know how much it costs to have the quality that you guys did, you did that first class. So if you do the storage code like that, which you're going to, it's going to be a winner.
It's really what we're trying to do with the National Conference and Trade Show is what we did.
You're going to do
the
it.
Magazine.
It's going to be a success. So,
and if your listeners want to find out more about the show, send them to msmtheshow.com.
Okay.
And all of our information about all of our speakers, our schedule, our evening events, all of our keynote information, all is there. And in the top right-hand corner, you can click register and get your registration for the event.
And again, it's been a real pleasure doing it. So next thing we're do is take a little bit of a break. Then we're going to listen to some cool songs that Mr. Morrow has put together that cover all the different areas. And those will be up a little bit after that, after the 3-week, on RadioWilderLive.com, so that the Capitol Musical Police don't shut us down, because I know we're ruining their business by playing Travis's song. So we'll take it up for a wrap. This is a wrapper. End of RadioWilderLive.com with Mr. Travis Morrow.
Thanks, Eric.
Nothing can stop me. Nothing more.